there was a request. Yes, I read those feedbacks. Somebody said, well, how do I use CommonJS modules, Sean? So there are going to be times when you're forced against your will, you have to use CommonJS. Like a good example is the React. God, it frustrates me so much that they're still in CommonJS, but they don't really care because they have their own module system internally. Anyways, so yes, if we wanted to use a CommonJS module, why don't we just define one so that we can actually consume it? So maybe I'll pop back into our dev mode, get our nice looking incremental build. And so for CommonJS, the format is kind of similar. This is something that I always confused myself though from time to time. So let's just say we have something called, I don't know, let's say button. Button, right? And we have two options. So we can do like a default export, or we can do named exports. Now I think what my button, like if I wanted to describe what I want my button to do, like let's say I want to take a name or a string, and then that's going to be the label, the button label. The label, and return a element, right? Okay, that's cool. So now I won't use the DOM APIs yet, but we can kind of think about this still. So module.exports. See, like I'm even questioning myself right now just thinking about module.exports. So with CommonJS, exports is with an S, not without an S. So that's where I always confuse. But module.exports is your default export. So what we're saying here is I want to provide a function that takes a button name and then returns something. So return, why don't we just return button and then, you know, button name as a string for right now. Why am I getting yelled at? Tell me why you're mad at me.
Parenthesis on the end rather than a.
Oh, thank you. See, crowd-driven development is my favorite. Now, of course, like our dev build hasn't recompiled. We haven't seen anything different, right? So why don't we go ahead and consume this, right? Because this would be nice. We'd take a name and then we'd, you know, return something. And so let's go ahead and pull it in. Now, we have some rules in Webpack that just say like, you cannot use CommonJS and ES syntax in the same file. It would throw an error. Or like you can't use an export and then a default exports or a module.exports. So what I tend to do is usually just use the ESM syntax at the top level. Webpack supports using require. But what we'll do is we actually have interop to support using both and have it work accurately with the correct cyclical dependencies and live bindings. So since we know that this is a default export, we can actually call this like make button from, and now we see button here. And there we go. We have Webpack recompiling. And sure, I could call like make button and then pass like my first button. Okay. So now if you wanted to use like, let's say, what would be a great idea? We're going to get that element and pull it in here, but maybe we have like a couple different styles we want to apply to it, or it would be style strings. I think that's fair. So why don't we create another file? Let's just say we want to button styles.js. I'm just going to try and show you the CommonJS named exports. So again, though, I heavily endorse not to use CommonJS as much as possible. And sometimes you might be using it and you don't even know it on accident. There are tools like Babel and TypeScript who safely default to converting your ESM to CommonJS behind the scenes and then passing it to Webpack. But Webpack supports ESM out of the box, and that's what makes it possible to tree shake, dead code eliminate, and all the optimizations.